Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Devin Allen, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Tickets, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4. Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation today will be delivered by Chaplain Melissa Zinto from Chaplain at One Safe Place.
Good morning, and I thank you, Judge, for inviting me to do this today. But I also was reminded by Rachel that it's Women's Equality Day. And it was so, your parking person doesn't know that it's Women's Equality Day because I pulled in and she's waving at me, the lot is full, the lot is full, the lot is full. And I said, yes, ma'am, I know, but I'm the chaplain here to lead the invocation for the Commissioner's Court. And she looked at me, she goes, it's still full. And I said, okay. I said, but they said that there was a spot that said minister. And she goes, oh, I'm so sorry. I was expecting a man. So there you go. Now, the judge had nothing to do with that. I know, right?
Turn on me.
But once again, thank you. And I hope
you did say that was a woman in the booth.
Yes, I did. Obviously, we don't know our own sometimes. Let's pray. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we're honored by your presence here in this place and in our lives. And we would just ask you, Heavenly Father, to make us your instruments of peace. Where we may extend hurt and pain, would you allow us to extend mercy and forgiveness? And when we might doubt, Father, we ask that you would give us faith. Lord God, where there may be hurt and pain, allow us to do the things that we need to do for you. Where there is darkness, we would want you to allow us to bring some light into that situation. Where there's sadness, allow us to find solutions in how to bring joy. Allow us not to seek to be encouraged, but to bring encouragement to others. To be understood as to understand, and to be loved as to love. It is in our forgiving that we too are forgiven. Allow us, Lord God, to die to ourselves so that all of us someday can be born into that eternal life. And it's in Jesus' name we pray these things. Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you, Chaplain. Good morning. Good morning, sir. Mr. Manius, agenda announcements.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of Court, we have several announcements as it relates to the agenda this morning. The first one is under the County Administrator section. This will be item 8A3. Before I say we're going to remove the order prohibiting outside burning in the unincorporated areas, I want you to know that we counted back, and out of the last 10 times that we actually imposed this ban, when we came to court that Tuesday, it was raining cats and dogs out there. So, Mr. Renoir, I'm surprised he showed up in court today, but he did call and ask that we remove it until further notice. So we're going to remove item A3.
Good.
Also, if we can look at item A9 under the Administrator section, this is an agreement between the county and the Homeless Coalition. We're going to remove that from the consent item. We're going to consider it when we get to that point, but we're going to remove it from consent at this time. If we can go to item 8E1, this is under the Criminal District Attorney. We're going to ask that that particular item be removed from consent also. We'll consider it in this morning, but let me tell you why. Is because there's a request that the county auditor issue a check in payment for this immediately before it first appears. So as part of that motion to approve, we want to include language that basically says, and we're requesting and authorizing the county auditor to issue a check without it first appearing on the claims register. So that is the reason we're removing that particular item, and I think Mr. Taylor is going to be presenting that to the court at that time. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you. We have a proclamation. Well, let's go ahead and do the agenda here. We'll go ahead and approve our minutes of our regular meeting of August the 20th.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Before we get to the proclamation, because we've got so many folks in the room, I want to remind everybody that the Heart Walk is coming up on September the 14th. If you haven't signed up for the county, we're trying to put our team together. I think we've got a little over 30 or maybe 30, almost 40 people now. Remember that for $25, you'll get a T-shirt. It'll be a bright T-shirt. I'll just say that. And I'm sure we'll have more people out there than the city of Fort Worth or anybody else might have out there. And again, we're just trying to raise funds for this great cause. And I hope everybody will sign up and that we can have a big showing and have a big picture. And I am still wearing my shorts because nobody has put up enough money to make me wear pants yet.
Does that bright
Now, wait a minute,
T-shirt-
shorts being versus long pants. Yes, Catherine?
I just want to let you know, lime green, neon.
Well, I knew what it was. I just wasn't going to tell everybody. But go right ahead and tell everybody.
His shorts are lime green?
Well, they could be.
Just any color but white, Judge. Any color but white.
Well, we'll work on that. So hopefully everybody will sign up. I know it was on the website, and so please go and sign up. So, and let's come out there and have a great day, and we'll walk for American Heart Walk. One other thing that I would just announce before we move to the proclamation. Debbie Snyder's mother passed away this past weekend. And her service, I believe, will be tomorrow. And I have the details.
Thursday.
Excuse me, Thursday.
I think it's 2 o'clock.
Visitation will be before the service from 2 until 3. And the service will be at Greenwood Funeral Home at 3:30. So, again, keep Debbie and her family in your prayers. She's had a rough year. So, just please do that. Commissioner Allen, I believe you have a few people here today.
I do. Got some of my homegirls here today. Hopefully they won't mind me using that term, but today we are recognizing Women's Equality Day. So of course the day itself in history was 99 years ago yesterday, and I thought, given the historical significance of that day, and then also serving on the court, that we should recognize the women who serve in office in Tarrant County. So there are quite a few hundred of them if you take all of the governing bodies and you combine them. And we've got a great group of them that were able to make it here today despite the rain. And what I'd like to do is to recognize each of those that are here this morning, and hopefully we haven't missed anybody, but if so, we'll be sure to add you to the bunch. So as I call your name, I'd like for you to stand and remain standing until all of your fellow elected women colleagues have been recognized. We have a special set of guests with us who they aren't elected, but they are, of course, extremely close to the very first woman to serve on the Tarrant County Commissioner's Court, Commissioner Deon Bagsby. We have her daughter and her 2 granddaughters. Thank you all for being here, and they're going to visit with us a little bit later.
I see Deon all over that middle one.
We've got, we did, of course, invite Commissioner Marty Van Ravensway. She was not able to make it, but she does send her best, and I'll make sure that our token of appreciation to her, that she does receive it. We have State Senator Beverly Powell, State Representative Nicole Collier, our District Attorney Sharon Wilson, our County Clerk Mary Louise Nicholson, We have Judge Judith Wells, Judge Molly Westfall, Judge Patricia Baca Bennett. We have Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Victoria Farrar Myers of the Arlington City Council, as well as Councilmember Barbara Odom Wesley. We've got Mary Lori Bianco from Dow Worthington Gardens, as well as Alderwoman Kathy Stein. We have Mayor Linda Martin from Euless, Councilwoman Johnny Allen from Everman, Councilwoman Melinda Miller from Forest Hill, Mayor Betsy Price from Fort Worth, as well as Councilwoman Ann Zeta of Fort Worth. We have Councilwoman Georgia Clemson from Grand Prairie, Councilwoman Sandra Lee from Kennedale, Councilwoman Julie Short from Mansfield, Councilwoman Mary Campbell of Saginaw. I thought I saw her. Oh, there we go. Great. Councilwoman Mary Copeland of Saginaw, excuse me. We have Crowley ISD trustees Nedra Robinson and June Davis. Fort Worth ISD trustees CJ Evans and Ann Darr. Councilwoman Catherine Redding from Burleson. Dr. Gwen Morrison of the Tarrant County College District. And, of course, Leah King with the Tarrant Regional Water District. Great. Please join me in recognizing Thank you so much for your service. Now at this time, I will read the Women's Equality Day resolution in. Whereas August 26, 2019 marks the 90th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which secured the right to vote for women. And whereas this landmark event is celebrated annually as Women's Equality Day. And whereas although the right to vote is seen as fundamental in the founding of our country, it was not until the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that all men and women aged 21 and older, regardless of race, religion, or education, were ensured the right to vote. And whereas women make up 51% of the U.S. population, but in 2019 women held just 23.7% of the 535 seats in the 116th U.S. Congress, 23.8% of the Texas legislature, and 27.9% of elected Tarrant County officials. And whereas in the 100-plus year history of the Commissioner's Court, only 3 women have been elected commissioner, including Dion Baxby and Marty Van Ravensway, and we thank them for their service. And whereas even though women have made great strides in the fight for equality, they still face disparities in pay, health care, and justice under the law. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby proclaim August 27, 2019 as Women's Equality Day in Tarrant County, and further we reaffirm the spirit of the 19th Amendment and pay tribute to the trailblazers and suffragists who launched the movement for women's rights and equality, and recommit ourselves to furthering the work for equality, ensuring all citizens have access to the ballot box. A witness whereof we have hereunto set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 27th day of August 2019. And with that, I move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Right. At this time, yes. So I'd like to ask Dion and family to please join us on the dais for a photo, and then I know you'll share some remarks with us. Thank you.
Then everybody else gets to do it. Now we're good.
Wow, it's been a long time since I've been here. And I can remember when my mom was here and my daughter, at that time, Kirby, how old were you? Maybe 6, 7? Yeah, maybe. And she used to run around here while you all were having pork. You know?
Yes, she did.
And so this was home for her. And I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for loving us, for supporting us, and keeping us as family. My daughters and I, we could not have asked for a better family than Commissioner's Court. Commissioner Allen, one more. I have to say something to Roy. Roy, there are no words that can express how much we love you. We would not have been able to get through Mother's transition without you. And I just thank you from the bottom of my heart, from my soul.
Love you.
I love you too.
Love you too, girl.
Commissioner Allen, you know, I was able to get a lot of new sisters during Mommy's journey. Everybody knows Mother decided to do it her way. And so Commissioner Allen is one of my newest sisters. And she spent time with me and my mother, and we had an instant connection. And so I want to thank you, and I want to thank the court for recognizing my mother today. I thought about it. My mother was able to witness unprecedented expansion in women's voting, access to health care, education, and physical independence. And I thought about what she would say right now at this time, in this moment. And she would say thank you. She would be very humble. But she would also say, there's still work to be done. And so I want to echo that. And I want to say also that women are in a better position to advocate for themselves and for their community. And I encourage all of us to do so. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much for those remarks. Again, I want to thank everyone for taking time out of your busy days to attend the reception we had earlier this morning, and of course to be here for the presentation of the resolution. And of course, next year we will be celebrating the 100th anniversary, and we're going to do it really big. So as I shared during the reception that, you know, as women, of course, we know that we wear many hats. If you wear one, you wear 20. We have many titles. If you have one, you have 50. And so I look forward to celebrating next year the 100th anniversary. And, of course, everyone's going to be invited. And so with that, I welcome any of my colleagues to make remarks.
Well, I would just like to thank everybody also for being here today. And thank you for the public service, for the work that you do for our communities. As Commissioner Allen mentioned, both as public servants, but just also in making sure that our community is a better place to live. And we want to thank you so much for everything that you do for our communities.
I want to thank Commissioner Allen for putting all this together.
Yes.
This is really great.
each and every one of you. As the husband and the father of strong women, I get it. And I know when to get out of the way. Congratulations, and thank you all for your service.
I just want to congratulate all of you that were here today and thank you for your service. It's nice of you to be here today to celebrate this day, and I'm looking forward to 100 years next year.
And Devin, you did good.
It was a team effort. I do want to thank Jay and Vonna and Kelly and everyone on our team, and then of course other folks throughout the county who made sure that we had what we needed for a great celebration. And next year, we'll have a conversation about the weather. But
Well, next year we will not put a burn ban, regardless of how dry it is. We won't put a burn ban on the agenda for next year.
Very good. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you all again very, very much. Court members, you have before you our consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Now, that's
Respecting
with
all
the items.
changes.
Yeah,
that,
with a couple of the removals and things like that from the consent agenda. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Please, Betsy.
See you later, Betsy.
Your Honor, members of the court, we have 3 additional items for the court this morning. The first item, we're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve an amendment or an amended electronic communication systems policy. As you might remember, Senate Bill 944 and HB 3834 were passed by the legislature this past session, and it changed on how we handled public information that resided on private computers and cell phones. And also HB 3834 mandated that cybersecurity training be provided to all employees. We have included those particular elements in an updated electronic communication systems policy, and we're requesting your approval.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the court, if we can go to item number 2, we're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve an interlocal agreement. This is a renewal between the county and the city of Hazlet for law enforcement services to be provided by the Sheriff's Department during fiscal year 2020.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And then, members of court, if we can go to item number 9. This is the one we pulled off of consent. We're seeking approval of an agreement between Tarrant County and the Homeless Coalition for the provision of providing housing information referral services for the homeless. This is a $20,000 grant. It comes from our community development funds, and we're seeking your approval.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, I just wanted to add that I had requested it be removed from consent. Since I serve on the board, I just wanted to abstain. So
Vote 4 and 1 abstention.
Thank you, Your Honor.
thank you.
Ms. Tidwell. Mr. Manius, you got your podium really pushed back there.
This is where Mr. Manius.
No, I know you hadn't touched it. I just thought that, he might want to push it forward a little bit. And I didn't want you to have to push it forward because he'd get all mad.
I'm not going to push it forward, no, sir. I'm not. So we have 2 items we're asking the court to consider this morning. The first is to approve the release and substitution of depository collateral as outlined in the court communique.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And our other item is to ask the court to receive and file the Tarrant County financial statements for the 10 months ended July 31st, 2019.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Garcia, do we want to address the district attorney's thing at this time?
Yes.
Please. Excuse me.
Thank you, Judge. We request approval to pay the accepted offer of judgment of the lawsuit entitled Nick Mikalauskis versus Tarrant County. We also request approval for the release of funds prior to appearing on the claims register.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Now, Mr. Garcia.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We come to this morning to ask the court to adopt the newly procured voting system from Hart InterCivic as the voting system to be used for all forms of elections and voting in Tarrant County. The Elections Code requires that before a voting system is used, the presiding entity adopts it formally for the conduct of elections in all forms.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hunter. Ms. Glenn.
Move to receive and file personnel agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file personnel agenda. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Good morning and thank you. We have one additional item, that's item 2. We're asking the court to waive terminal benefits for Commissioner Precinct 4. The commissioner is requesting a waiver of 392 vacation hours effective September 3rd. The net cost to the Road and Bridge Fund will be approximately $11,800. That does include fringe benefits.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Vinny.
Morning, Your Honor, members of the court. Public Health has one item requesting your approval for a memorandum of understanding with the Department of State Health Services for definition of roles and responsibilities for the inventory tracking electronic asset management system.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jack.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Unlike TCU, who have chosen to play Arkansas Pine Bluff as their perennial powerhouse game, we've selected Portland State. In the same equation.
You know Texas A&M is playing? Texas State. Go Bobcats.
We have 6 items for your consideration this morning.
Go Bobcat.
Item number 1 is a bid award recommendation for bid 2019-197. Submitted for the Northwest Subcourthouse 3rd floor shell space finish out for Emergency Disaster Management Business Continuity Center. Recommendation would be to award certain sections to JMS Construction Solutions, FSI Construction, the amount of $121,549.73 total. If approved, we're seeking contract approval, acceptance of the payment bonds.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 2 is also a bid award recommendation for bid 2019-200, signing a contract for rental of Bobcat trucks for Elections Administration. Recommendation be to award to the low bidder, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, on a per unit price basis.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 3, also a bid award recommendation for bid 2019-201, bid for the purchase of jury room seating for the Tim Curry Criminal Justice Center. Recommendation be to award the low bidder, Burgoon Company, in the amount of $32,572.50.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Are we just replacing all the jury seats?
Yes, sir.
How many chairs do you get for 32,000?
Whoa.
A bunch.
10, 20 times 12. 520?
Wow.
Motion passes unanimously. Are they going to have cushions in them?
Yes, sir. Very nice.
Item number 4, also a bid award recommendation for bid 2019-202, bid for the Northeast Courthouse furnishing shell finish out. Recommendation would be to award a per enterprise basis, awarding certain sections to Corporate Source, and furniture by William Webb on a per enterprise basis.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion second, but not from Commissioner 3, so do you have any comments about your furniture?
He didn't make the motion or second.
Well, I know, that's kind of what troubles me.
Yeah, no, I don't have any problems with that. I was back on the chairs. I was doing my math on the chairs. So I'll talk about that in a second.
What about $600 a chair?
No, $65 a chair. 500 chairs.
It's a good deal.
One of those folding chairs.
No.
We're going to get back to this motion in a minute, but we're going to go ahead and talk about the one we done passed here for a second.
You need a second?
No, I've already got the motion and second on your sub-courthouse.
Okay, good. We'll call for the question.
Yes, sir. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Now do you want to talk about your chairs?
Yeah. How many chairs are you buying?
502?
For 32? 32, are they $65 a piece?
Yes, sir.
What kind of chairs are they?
They are very similar to the chairs that are in existence. They're all metal construction. They'll have a pocket on the back for the cards, and then they have a shelf beneath them for the clipboards for when the jurors come and fill out all that information, so forth.
These are the ones in the where you're picking a jury?
Yes, sir. They're
Not
the
picking a jury.
I thought we were talking about in the jury box.
Yeah,
No.
that's what I thought.
This is the pool room, I guess you would call it.
Central jury room.
They are kind of a bluish gray.
No, you've answered the question. I understand what, I thought the same thing he thought.
That we were talking about in the
No,
courtroom.
they're replacing these. The ones that are there is about 20 years old, actually.
Yeah.
So they're replacing them.
Okay, yeah, those are not expensive chairs.
The jury.
The jury pool.
Low bid.
Thank you.
You okay with that, Roy?
Yes, sir.
I think we're moving on to item number 5 now, after we went back to item 3, but that's okay.
Also, a bid award recommendation for bid 2019-202, the purchase of an industrial 100 horsepower cross-cut shredder for facilities management. Recommendation bid award low bidder, Allegheny Paper Shredders Corporation, the amount of $120,176.
I think you said 202, but I think you meant 209.
209.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion to second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Last item, number 6, bid number 2019-212, annual contract for traffic paint. Recommendation be to order per enterprise basis, awarding to the primary, secondary, and alternate vendors as shown in your court communique.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion to second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Are there any appointments today? There being none, then we will move on to the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second.
Our motion is second to approve the claims, including the addendum. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, Mr. Mayes?
Thank you, Your Honor. We have 2 items for the court this morning. The first one deals with the Tarrant County 911 Emergency Assistance District's proposed budget for FY20. Ms. Haynes is here to address the court at this time.
Good morning.
Yes, you have to remind me how short I was. With my forewarning that I had 5 minutes, we're going to hop through the first couple slides quickly because they're redundant information, and then we're going to focus on some of the director's notes. First couple slides, just as a reminder of the legislation that created the 911 district. Talks about the board of managers that oversees the district. There we go. The participating members of the district and the 911 or PSAP, as it's known, their public safety answering points. There's 29 primary 911 centers that are 24/7, and then we have secondary that handle fire and EMS calls. We have 41 member cities that participate in the district, and we cover a population. We have a population of 2.5 million, covering 1,100 square miles. Excuse me. We have a little over 1 million wireline database records. Estimate at this time of about 1.98 million wireless devices, handling in 2018 1.95 million calls. There's a map of our district. And the budget as reflected for 2019, we're looking at a revenue of 15.1 with monies coming from our replacement fund. We're replacing the call handling equipment for all of the participating 911 centers. We have about 8.6 million still left of that project to pay for, and then we have the normal expenditures that the district handles. The organization chart for 2020 is quite different from what we had previously. In the last year, we've created 7 positions. Most of those positions have come on the side of technology. With our new 911 call processing system, we've gone to a completely IP-based version of telephony, and hence it has required an increase in our technical support team to cover the 24/7 operations. A lot has changed over the last 50 years in 911, and those changes are affecting us as well. With nearly 800 911 telecommunicators and a large population and city, we have upgraded many of our systems and processes to handle the call volume that we receive. To date, we're still looking at about 86% of the calls that 911 centers receive coming from a wireless device, and hence that's why many agencies like ours are going to a more effective IP solution, because we're no longer dependent on landlines or wired lines for our calls. Excuse me. And so 1 out of every 10 calls, approximately 8.5 of them come from a wireless device. The IP-enabled 911 network that we're referring to earlier is taking us from the dependency of a wired line service to an IP network that will allow us to have better proficiency in call processing as well as location identification. We will in that we are using what's called a sonnet ring, which has a self-healing core, which allows for failover and continuity of operations in case there is an outage on one side or the other of our network. This IP network has 4 data centers and actually 4 geographic locations. We cover over 300 workstations that handle the 911 calls, and this allows us the ability to establish what we consider a virtual 911 center or virtual PSAP, which allows us a solution that we can have backup centers and people can log in and take calls from wherever in Tarrant County they need to be in case of a disaster. As was mentioned last year around this time, the county has investigated and will be implementing a text to 911 service. So that bridge that we were discussing last year, we've crossed over that bridge. And with the completion of the new call handling SIS software at the end of this year, in January, we will advise the FCC as well as the telecoms that we're ready to go text to 911 with the go-live date of July 1st, 2020.
You knew I was holding that question.
So was I.
I tried to preempt you a little bit.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. That is the gist of the presentation.
Okay, I'm looking first off at your budget,
Yes, sir.
and it helps me greatly when I see a balance sheet, and I don't.
Okay.
But if I go to page 14 of your presentation, where it shows expenditures and income and expenditures, and it's this presentation right here.
Okay. You said it's page 14?
Yep.
Okay.
Now, the previous page shows total income of 15.2, and then page 14 shows total expenses of 23. So we're going to have a loss of $8.3 million.
Correct.
And that's going to give us an estimated ending fund balance of 20, and I don't see the beginning, but I'll just trust you that that's where it is that year. But going to the next, that was for fiscal year 2017-2018.
Correct.
For 2018-2019, if I take 20 million from the previous year and subtract from that 8.3 loss again, it ought to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 12, and you're showing 18. And then for 2019-2020, you're taking 18 and you're showing again another 8.5, and that would have made it about, if we were taking it off the 12, it would make it 4, but you were taking it off the 18, and it still don't make it 14. So I got problems.
Okay. The 2017, the 2017 and 2018 budget, 2018, 2019 budgets were created and handled by my predecessor. But what I will tell you is that the $20 million funds that were set aside originally for the call handling equipment, the anticipation were the payments would be split among the 4 or 5 years of the process. And actually, we're about $16,000 worth of payments that we have not made because the equipment was not up to par. So
But they still don't time. I mean, you're responsible for what, year 1920?
Basically, yes, sir.
Okay, so if I look at 1920 and go on to page 14, let's just say that the 14 was what you ended, well, no, that's going to be the end of 2019-20. So let's say if you started off with 18 and you subtracted 8, you ought to have ended up with 10. And then if you lose 4, you're going to end up with 6. And if you lose another 4, you're going to be down to about 2, and you're showing 10. Something don't work.
Your Honor, if you look on slide 13.
Okay, I'll go to 13.
It's one previous, and at that first line, the estimated beginning fund balance for 2019-2020 says 23.4 million. When you look back on page 14, their estimated was ending fund balance was 18.6 million.
Well, I don't understand how the
So that might be
ending fund balance can't be the next year's beginning fund balance.
Because the ending fund balance, as depicted in the 2018-2019 budget, was based on the assumption that $8 million would have been paid out on the CPE project, and that money is not going to be paid out. So that money goes back in.
Why aren't we showing accurate numbers on the income statement?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Why aren't we showing actual numbers for prior years' fund balance? That's where my balance sheet would help me tremendously.
Okay, I mean, I
Just
can
have your
definitely work
CFO
on
give
that,
me a
but
call.
okay, I can definitely get some information for you. Again, the 17 and 18 budget years, I took the same information from that I received and the documents that I had, so I can definitely do some investigation and see where the discrepancies are. But for the 2019-2020 budget, what I did was add back the monies that we anticipated spending, quote unquote, as a loss on the CP project, because I know we're not going to spend that money this year because AT&T and Vesta have not met our standards to make the subsequent payments.
Okay, we could get that information. We're not asking for any court action today.
I got a question. How many full-time employees do y'all have?
We currently have 26.
Did y'all do salary increases this year?
Based on the market compensation, yes, and then we are currently going through a performance evaluation process, yes.
Do you know what percentage, average?
It'll be an average of about 3%.
I have a question on page 13 towards the bottom. I guess maybe I'm trying to see what section this would be. Okay, services, rentals, and contractual services. For 2017, 2018, and then 2018, 2019. Those the two different columns where there's 4 zeros in a row. And then starting with 2019, 2020, we start to see expenditures there. And is that related to the transition that we're going through right now?
No, if you look under contract and services for the 17 and 18 budgets, they say 7 million plus. And then if you look at 19, 20, 21, there are about 100,000. So what I did was that essentially took a bunch of stuff and dropped it in a bucket. Well, it didn't really explain what the money was being used for. So what I did starting the 2019 budget is actually break down the expenses so that they can give more of an explanation of why we need to put aside $6 million and what for.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? So is does this come back to us, or what do we?
Yes, but the way that we've always done this, 911 has to make presentations to various governmental entities, including the Mayor's Council. They'll do that, and then they'll come back to us and we'll approve their budget.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And again, we're very glad to see the text.
You're welcome.
911.
Your Honor, we can go to item B. This is the budget. And let me just say a few words and then turn it over to Helen. The budget office has been working with various departments, and we have come a long way from where we were last week, and we have recommendations. And with that, I will turn that over. We'll not only talk about the budget, we're also going to provide you some information as it relates to the tax rate, so that you all can consider that. I know there's been requests from several court members to talk about that, and we have some information that we're going to hand out to you on that also. So, Helen?
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Candace is handing out the sheets of paper so we don't get lost.
Thank you.
Did you give them the tax rate also? Make sure that Robin gets one of them. Okay. So you have 4 sheets of, maybe 5. I don't know if she handed the tax rate information also. We're going to start off with the 2 sheets that say Criminal District Attorney to be considered recommendations and Sheriff to be considered recommendations. These are the items that we talked about last week, but we're making recommendations on them this week. The Sheriff's Office and the Criminal District Attorney's Office has diligently and worked hard trying to come up with offsetting costs. That was the direction we were given last week. And we've come up with a solution for a recommendation. So if you look at the Sheriff's Office first, the sheet that says Sheriff to be considered recommendation, there are currently 5 positions in the recommended budget, and the offsets that they gave us, and we'll go into detail about the offsets, this is just a high-level description now, are able to fund 12 positions. So our recommendation today is, in addition to the 5 positions that we've already recommended in the budget, is an additional 12 positions with offsetting costs that we'll discuss completely over here. And then the district attorney, the criminal district attorney, that's the second sheet of paper that shows names of positions. We have protective order. I want to explain that one. The grant is still not approved. We don't have finalization, but the COGS recommendation is for $100,000 to be the split between 2 positions. So the grant match for the protective order will be an additional $32,557. That is already a portion of that is already captured in the recommended budget. And again, when we look at the expenses that we're offsetting for these costs, we'll discuss them on this other page. There is a grade 77. Again, this is in the civil division. It is a senior attorney, grade 76, 1 intake position. We in their current recommendation that y'all have approved is one intake. This is an additional intake position. Her original request was for 6 misdemeanor attorneys, and this is for 4. Our recommendation is for 4, leaving 2 still out there on the table. And then the reclass of a current position that she has in lieu of a new position that she had out there. So this is what we're recommending with offsetting expenditures.
And so I want to be sure I've got.
Thank you.
You're saying you're fixing to show us where you're offsetting
Yes,
this
sir.
693 with DA and 1.1 million with the sheriff and 55.8 with constables.
Yes. And in addition, that 1.1 makes up the grade 53 starting at D. We are recommending that because they have found offsetting operating costs for that. But that also affects the constables. So down below you see a 55,828. That's what is going to affect the constables. And we've almost found everything to offset the constables' cost also. We're leaving a net. Okay? Any questions about what we're recommending? Position-wise?
I want to see what the offsets are.
Okay, the offsets. Okay, so the second, there's 2 sheets. It says page 1 of 2 and 2 of 2.
Yep.
And it's titled the FY 2020 To Be Considered Recommendations effective as of today. So this is in numerical, budgeting fund center numerical order. So you'll see some credits and then the expenses, so that you see at the bottom a net impact of $14,056. So if you approve what's recommended, the additional cost to the operating budget will be $14,056.
And I thought the 364 we had already taken into account.
364.
Your first item under non-departmental. Wasn't that Commissioner Brooks?
It's the operating transfer that's going to be reduced. Yes, sir. That is an expense that happened over in general fund. It reduces the operating transfer. 2 actions have to happen. And so it's reducing the operating transfer. You approve the reduction on that, and then the operating transfer has to be reduced.
So what we just did basically is took what Commissioner Brooks reduced in his road and bridge and said that meant we didn't have to transfer the money, so we had 364,000 more. And that's an operational type item,
Yes,
which
sir.
conceivably would go from one year to the next.
It will continually go. Yes, the operating transfer from general fund to road and bridge always is an ongoing transfer.
Okay. Next.
The next larger item is a reduction to capital, which also is a transfer over to the capital fund. So you'll see the reduction in the operating transfer over to capital of $200,000.
But that's capital, and that's not
capital. The
ongoing.
capital item itself is a
That's a
one-time,
one-time.
but the transfer happens every year. Yes, sir.
Well, it happens every year if somebody gives up $200,000 worth of capital. Capital is a one-time deal, that,
Yes,
as
sir.
is really, for that matter, as is asphalt.
Well, it's an ongoing operating cost. I mean,
Okay, I'll buy that one, but you're not gonna convince me on the capital. Because that's,
It's still a source of funds to help balance this budget.
I don't disagree with it with regards to balancing this budget, but I think we do have to remember that the $200,000 worth of costs that we add are going to continue year after year after year after year.
That's a correct statement.
That's true.
And the $200,000 piece of equipment that we buy, we're not going to buy every year.
that's correct also.
So I would, I guess, argue that the $14,056 net impact right now, it's a net impact this year of $14,000, but from this point forward, it'll be $214,000.
unless we keep our capital costs down.
Can you,
Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
can you explain again the 364?
So it's with both. We will reduce the capital capital has been now moved over to our non-debt capital. So we will reduce that non-debt capital when we present it to you in special purpose budgets. But there is a transfer that has to go over there to offset that cost. And the transfer happens in general fund. So in essence, when we reduce it here, we have to reduce the transfer over to cover it. In addition to the operating cost, the Road and Bridge has a transfer that happens as a revenue into Road and Bridge to offset all of the cost. So with the $364,000 that we reduced Road and Bridge, we'll have to reduce the transfer over.
And again, what that basically is saying is, that's Commissioner Brooks, and I think that came out of your asphalt budget.
Correct.
Which says that every year hereafter, either he's gonna give us $364,000 worth of asphalt.
Nope.
No.
Not committing to that.
So that too is really not an operational, it's just a one-time deal. So you're setting yourself up to begin that you gotta find $564,000 next year to pay for the operational costs that we are guaranteed will continue on an annual basis. So that's what that means on an ongoing, go-forward basis.
It's funny money.
Well, it's either funny money or it's money that we'll reduce our reserves by.
Right.
The bottom line is next year, it's gonna be twice as bad. And we're gonna be probably coming to everybody saying, what can you cut?
Right.
Not what you can't add, but what can you cut?
Moving on down
Okay.
your list of numbers.
So in the current recommended budget, under the county administrator's department, there is a staff attorney grade 73. That's removing that request.
You're what?
Removing that request for the grade 73. Yes, sir, there's two positions, only one is being removed. The grade 73, the grade 77 is still in the to be considered recommendations.
When do we get to that?
I do not have that on this sheet.
Well, I appreciate the one being removed, but I'm perfectly satisfied with the district attorney representing us, and I think both of them should be removed.
So I believe I believe that Mr. Beecham is going to be.
Well, the 77 is still in there.
It's still in there.
It's still in there. You know, and that's, you know, we've always
Still
said
to be
that's
considered.
That's a decision that the court needs to make. I would suggest that if we go through these, and if we want to consider the 77 today, just consider the 77.
Do what now?
I said, let's go through this revenue issue here, and then if the court wants to talk about the 77, then we can talk about the 77 as soon as we go through this, and then the court can make a decision.
So
Just don't let it drop. I do want to consider taking that out.
we'll take that out today. We'll take it up today.
So for the sheriff's office, the next line is the 12 additional. That's the increase in cost. And the sheriff's office has looked at several of their operating costs that they are able to move over to their commissary funds, which means that it is required to somehow be associated with inmates. And custodial services, laundry services, and the food contract for prisoners. Now they're just reducing the food contract for prisoners. They believe that they budgeted above what was needed for next year, and they're reducing that. And then the other two are being continuing operating costs from year over year will now go over to a fund called the S87 commissary funds.
So this is the Sheriff's Department is acknowledging that this is an ongoing
Yes, sir.
Transfer that will occur.
That will occur over in that fund and no longer in the operating budget. It meets the requirements of that fund.
And how much money are you talking about?
I don't have something to add, but approximately for $600,000
total.
And that's going to be every year?
Every year, yes.
And
we all met together, the sheriff.
Money in the commissary fund every year? Are we going to have $600,000+ in the commissary fund every year to transfer to these items?
We believe that for the foreseeable couple of years that we're good to go. You know, obviously I don't have a crystal ball out 3 or 4 or 5 years, but for the next couple of years we certainly are solid. And we're good to go.
And it's really $1 million. It's not just 600,000.
Well, there's a large cash. There is, I believe, approximately $5 million in cash in addition to the revenues that they receive every year in there. So there is an ongoing, and that cash has been in there for several years. It's continuing to build. Now it's somewhat flat, and they are expensing approximately the same amount that they're bringing in revenues, but it does have it is sustainable for several years. I believe more than 2, but I believe it's several years out, quite a few.
Good.
Then on the next one is the constables going grade 53 to the starting at step D, and that's the cost for that.
Why is Constable Precinct 2 so much more than
Well, it means that he has newer employees. Constable A and Constable 2 have newer employees that are not at the step D yet.
Okay.
They're A, B, and C.
Okay.
And that's why some of them aren't listed here. They don't have anybody below D, excuse me. Okay. Then we get to the DA's office. And the decision there was to move ongoing operating cost to her forfeiture funds, D87, narcotics forfeiture, I believe is what it's called. They're moving there. And again, this meets all of the statutory requirements for the expense to move over there. They have dues, computer supplies, education, from the civil, admin, and criminal, and investigations. We did, the DA's office and myself did a study, and we're looking at least 10 to 15 years sustainable for that cost, if not more. But again, you never know from one year to the next, from one legislative session to the next, what the legislature may choose to do.
Isn't that the truth?
Right. So the expenses that you see for the salary for the civil, that is the additional civil attorney. And then you see the grant match. That's what we discussed about the protective order. It's not under a salary line item. It is under grant match. In the DA's, the $356,000, that's for one intake, 4 misdemeanors, and the reclass of the one position. And then, again, education, operating subsidy, that is a grant that they will not be using, and so that money is coming back. And then in the investigators, the range supplies, safety tactical, again, education and software maintenance. Again, all meeting the requirements for Chapter 59 expenses. Leaving a net of $14,056, a net impact, in addition to the $200,000.
In the current year.
Can we go back up to the CDA civil with the grant matching?
Yes.
I thought the grant wasn't awarded.
It has not been approved yet. COG has recommended $100,000, and in full disclosure, there is a current position, and her salary is much higher than the $100,000 currently. But it's for 2 positions. So if the state approves what COG has recommended, there will be money aside for that. But we don't have, that probably will not happen until, I think historically, it's been about September, before we have that confirmation that the state has awarded it. And with what they currently have out there on grant match, in addition to this amount, will cover the salary 100% through grant match.
Okay, so this is your recommendations at this point in time.
Yes, sir.
Do I have a motion or discussion about this at this point?
I'll move approval. And with that approval, I would like to thank the Sheriff's Department and the DA's office for going back and looking at your budgets and coming back with some meaningful ways to fund what you're needing in your department. So anyway, that is my motion.
I second the motion and the thanks.
I think that this helped a lot from that perspective.
They worked very hard. I appreciated working with them.
Very much. Other discussion? Questions? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Do you want the discussion of the grade 77 now?
Yeah, I mean, right now that is in the recommended budget that we have.
Well, it's in it, but it's still under the to be considered.
To be considered.
You did not vote for approval in any way for it.
Okay.
Are there other things for us to consider under to be continued still?
I believe that is the last item.
Was there an issue on probate one?
No, we brought that up
That's
last week. Probate 1, we brought that up last week. They voted on it for a project position for 1 year.
For 1 year.
Okay.
Well, I had a good visit with the district attorney this morning on representation of departments. And it's my understanding that it's the purchasing department that is pushing for this 77 attorney. And Sharon has agreed if we can find a place to house an attorney over in this building, that she would place a civil attorney over here for department heads and elected officials to use on items such as the purchasing department has brought up, as the auditor has brought up in the past. And
the problem, though, is that a lot of times the questions that they have, the DA can't rule on them because there's a conflict. Either they're questioning something that the DA is doing, or the DA says that she has a conflict and can't do it. And so those are some of the issues that have come up from that standpoint.
Sharon, could you respond to that, please?
So first, thank you for the opportunity to speak about this. The first knowledge that we had of a request or ongoing conflicts was, of course, just a couple of days before the first budget meeting. The rationale initially was about juvenile probation, the auditor, and purchasing. We have met with the people in the juvenile board at their last meeting withdrew their request. As you all know, we have continued to work with them and to provide legal opinions at their request. The auditor has indicated that if there's a problem, she'll request a specific attorney, and that gets us to the purchasing issue. And let me, so as far as I can tell, and I have not attended a purchasing board meeting, but I fully intend to be at every one from now on, or to have someone there. But apparently the heart of the concern there was our request for an AG opinion, and that opinion was issued on August the 13th, and it ruled in favor of Mr. Beecham. I called him that day and said, the AG opinion's out, you're right, and we still stand ready to represent you. Let me assure you that the entire time that AG opinion request was pending, we represented him on a daily basis. And since the opinion came out, we've continued to represent him on a daily basis. And let me just also suggest that a difference of opinion is not a conflict. we actually thought, I was surprised that it was such a problem for us to ask for an AG opinion. We had talked, Robert Browder had talked to Jack over some time about a specific provision of the law and how it should be applied. And he disagreed with our opinion. We disagreed with his interpretation. He was right. And we asked for an AG opinion. That's what you do. You know, it's not a dispute. Nobody's suing anybody. It's not a conflict. We're just asking for an opinion. When we discussed this issue on August the 7th at this last meeting, he indicated that there was plenty of work for everyone. That's really what he talked about with you all versus any ongoing conflict. And I would suggest that we don't have an ongoing conflict. What we have is a need for him to have counsel on a regular basis. I have some concerns about a staff attorney being placed in the county administrator's office. You know, we've not been involved in that discussion, but I would wonder to whom they report, who is their specific client, what is the separation of their duties versus our duties, with whom do they have an attorney-client relationship and therefore confidentiality. So the discussion that we've had since we found out about the request for staff attorneys in the county administrator's office has highlighted the need for me to make sure that the service that I provide for our elected officials, and I think that we don't have any complaints from our elected officials about our service, that we should be doing that same level of service for department heads. And since you have now just approved an additional attorney for my office, I can pledge to you that we will make every effort to provide the same level of service to department heads that we do for our elected officials. I guess that my request right now is, and regarding having someone down here, about 4 months ago I asked Robert Browder to talk to GK about finding space in this building for us to have a prosecutor. The reason I think that's a good idea is we currently have a contract with JPS, and under that contract we have 2 attorneys and a staff person at office at JPS, and that's a wonderful relationship. I think that accessibility has been very well received. We want to provide that same accessibility here and are absolutely willing to do so. So I guess that my request is, before we make this very significant change in what we do in Tarrant County, I would request 6 months, 8 months for us to get up and running with our additional staff person, look for a space down here for our people to be housed, and let's see if we can address these issues. That would be my request.
Will you have to have a person with this attorney?
Not a new person.
You need space for 2 people rather than 1?
I would ask for space for 1 attorney, and then as we gear up, we may ask for an additional attorney to be moved down here, kind of like a satellite office like we do at JPS. I think that's a smart move.
I'm thinking secretarial help.
We can do most of everything now by computer. Okay. It would be nice for them to have someone, but we can probably do it by computer.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Why do you need them here?
We're just trying to.
At your office where they've got everything there.
You know, when I asked Browder to talk about getting us an office down here to talk to GK, that's exactly what he said. Why do we have to go down there? I walked down the, and he specifically mentioned HR. He said, every time anybody calls, I am down the street. And I said, I get that. You know, you come when you're called, but I do think that there is some relationship that is to be gained when you're here, right? So that somebody can just come by if they want to talk, because they may not want to call and say, walk down the street in the rain and the 120-degree heat, whatever.
I would just say that I think there have been folks who have spoke to me regarding the fact that they felt like at times they couldn't, because it did involve the DA's office, that they couldn't seek advice from the office because it was about the office. There are folks who just felt like that, they would be more comfortable speaking with someone outside of the DA's office. You said prosecutor, but you're not really planning on putting a prosecutor down here. It'd be more like a civil attorney.
Everybody that works for me is an assistant criminal district attorney. So yes, it will be an assistant criminal district attorney assigned to the civil division. So, I mean, it's a civil attorney, yes, sir.
That's my question. So, I mean, I guess that's why I felt and would support having the attorney here in this particular area.
You mean in the administrator's office or just in this building?
In the and I don't know that I see that person being under the administrator's control, but I do see them being somewhat independent. Not somewhat independent, independent of the DA's office.
Who are they going to report to?
Well, I think that they will report
County
to.
judge?
I think, no. I think they'll report to the court, like we have had people before report to the court. But I think they're also accessible to not only elected officials, but also department heads who have questions that they don't feel at this point in time that they can go to the DA and speak with.
So you're talking about an attorney that's not with the DA?
Correct. And I mean, you know, and I would just say, I mean, one of the problems that I had during the legislative session was when basically counter to what the commissioner's court, whose clients you're supposed to be, or I guess whose representative you're supposed to be, decided that, you know, you were going to take a position opposite of ours in the commissary deal that the sheriff had done. And I know that maybe that puts you between a rock and a hard place, but I guess if it puts you between a rock and a hard place, you shouldn't take a position.
So then, let me just make sure I understand, because it's the second time you've mentioned that. And it is correct that I supported a bill in the legislature that was different than what you all supported. It was a bill that the sheriff supported. And as a countywide elected official, I actually thought that I had the right to have an opinion and state it. And in my opinion, that does not affect my representation of you all. I didn't appear before you on anything to do with commissary. That was not something that we had advised you on. And honestly, if that is a conflict such that you have to have your own attorney, that is surprising to me. And I appreciate that you disagree with me on that.
Well, you do represent the commissioner's court, correct?
I am your lawyer.
And as our lawyer, are you supposed to take positions, ethically take positions against your client?
You know, and that, so ethically, I'm not to take a position against you on something that we have discussed. I do not believe that that affects my ability, my First Amendment right, honestly, as a countywide elected official to state an opinion.
From my perspective as a CPA, ethically, I'm going to do what my client asks me to do. And I believe you're right. You have a First Amendment right. If you're not, but I think under your legal ethics, you also have a right to represent your client. And we are your client. And you have on a number of occasions told other elected officials that you can't represent them because you represent the commissioner's court. Is that not correct?
When there is a conflict between another elected official and you all on a legal issue, we, as the DA's office, represent you first. That is correct.
And this was a position that we had taken as a court, as we do all, when we go in and speak against a bill, we do it unanimously and we do it as a court. And the first we heard that you weren't supporting us is when you had your representative down there drop a card against our position.
Yes, sir. So it's your contention that if a person is the attorney for anyone, that ethically that attorney has to support everything that person does. And I would suggest to you, having served on the grievance committee, that that's not correct. That an attorney does not have to agree with or support every single decision or action that their client does. As your attorney, that was not an issue that we had talked about, that I had represented you on, and so that is simply what my response is. And I understand that you don't agree.
Yes, ma'am, you're right.
So again, my request is,
But I think this is a point of what I'm hearing from other folks. And it's the same disagreement as to, and they don't have anybody to go to. When you disagree with someone, they have no choice but to either come to us and ask for outside counsel, or to just basically understand that you've taken your position.
and when there is a request for outside counsel on a specific matter, let me suggest that that will be much less expensive than a full-time employee that I don't know what they do. So I would be surprised if, with my predecessors, there's never been a time when department heads or other elected officials disagreed with what they were told as the law from our office. I would be surprised by that.
I can only recount for the last 23 years.
And it's never happened before.
Correct.
That's. You know, I am surprised by that. I will tell you that everyone on my staff, especially the civil division, tries to make sure that when we give you legal advice that we are very clear what the law is and that we can show you what that law is. If you decide to fund a staff attorney that's housed in GK's office, number one, that's a sea change from the relationship that we've had as your county and district attorney, the criminal district attorney's office forever. If they don't have a specific client, that is a whole host of other legal issues. So that's my request. My request is, I understand the need for our office to be responsive to our department heads and to continue to do that, and I pledge to you that we will.
It's up to y'all. It's in the budget.
Well, I move that we not approve the 77 attorney for the administrator's office.
I'd like to ask that we put this off for another week so that we can continue to discuss it.
Hearing no second.
I will withdraw my motion. I don't have a problem with putting it off another week or a month or a year. You want to wait till next year to talk about it?
I think a week is sufficient.
We'll do it then.
And as you put it off for a week, I would request, if you don't mind, Judge Whitley, giving me those examples of where the conflict is so that I can address it and make sure that there's not something we haven't missed.
Well, some of those are confidential, and no, I won't be able to do that. I would be glad to sit down and talk with you about that, but some of them, you know, were very specific about confidentiality when they approached me.
Well, we got one behind you that may not be confidential, so Mr. Beecham standing back there.
I just want to clear up a couple more things. This request was based on Renee's and my conversation. It wasn't just purchasing. GK didn't request that this individual be placed in his office. We had some concerns, have had some concerns quite some time. Since the AG's opinion came back, the sandbox is like it used to be. I'm good with that. You did call me. We had an excellent conversation. Excellent conversation. We've had good conversations for the last 25 years, and I don't see that changing. And my statement to you, after you and I spoke, was that the most important thing to me, whether we had an AG's opinion request or not, was that you and I could talk at the end of the day and respect each other. Is that not true? Shannon, Melissa Lee, my assistant, and Vince Cruz were the three people that were in attendance at the purchasing board meeting. So you did have representation.
She accidentally came in.
And
She was like, oh my gosh, something's going on.
You're slammed, your office, I get that. I have never, in the 25 years I worked here, not taken your opinion from the civil division. Do I agree? 99.9% of the time I do. We tell our customers, the other departments, we're going to follow the DA's lead every single time we've done that. We've always worked with less. We could do it again. That individual, the request that we made to the purchasing board, and I don't have the authority to overdo or request what they, the discussion we had in our purchasing board meeting on May the 14th. So the conversation is out there since the 14th of May.
I was opposed to it then. I'm opposed to it now, Jack.
Yes,
and I'm on the purchasing board.
We'll do what we need to do. I'm not sure if there's a benefit one way or the other to them, somebody walking down the street or housing this office, as long as we get the attention. And our business has changed, which is exactly what I spoke in extensive conversation with the purchasing board. Everything we do is complicated. It's more than that. Kim Wesley has spent hours on hours talking about the election equipment. There is seldom a meeting we have with the IT department that we don't have somebody in attendance because it's that complicated. There's nothing simple for anybody in this county. And all we were trying to do was ensure that we had coverage, that we had the ability to be represented, the AG's opinion being changed. That helps a lot.
Okay, what else?
Jack?
Yes, sir.
I think what you've described is that you had an issue, one major issue?
No, it's been more than that. But the issue is we couldn't get the attention that we needed. And I'm not going to blame anybody. The business in this county has increased that much.
I guess my point is, if you have an issue and you don't feel that the DA can properly represent you, you have other alternatives through the purchasing board,
Commissioner's Court,
to seek outside attorneys. I think to go to an outside attorney, we do that quite often here, and I think it's probably a whole lot less expensive on a yearly basis than you have in a staff attorney.
And I understand that. And Judge Wells, before court this morning, indicated that you and she had talked. I found out about at 15 minutes. We'll make it work, which were my exact statements to her. We will make it work. We've done it for the last 25 years. I don't see that changing. We will make it work. And I would feel comfortable with being represented by the DA's office, but I got to know that and I think you've already said that, so I don't need to beat it in the ground. We're good either way. It was not meant as a slam to anybody. I came to the purchasing board. I've talked to people in the court about our concerns. We're in a good place. We'll make it work every time. Thank you.
So, Jack, I do have a question for you. What, just an estimation of what percentage of the, I guess, contracts achieve the level of complexity that requires to have
that much attention?
Right.
Probably 80%, if you really want to know the truth. We can go back to the backup data center. I could get with the health department. There's not a department that we service in this county, and everybody's our customers also.
Sure.
It's that complicated. Wasn't that way 25 years ago. That's how it's turned. There are contracts after contracts after contracts that we have to review, and your guys have done a good job, but you're slammed to the wall, and we get that. But
she's willing to put one over here in this building.
Am I willing to put?
She is willing to, Jack.
I'm good with it.
Good.
We'll make it work.
Any other questions? Mr. Manius.
No, go ahead. Sure.
Okay, taking my cue from Dion this morning saying that we should advocate for ourselves, I want to give you all something.
Thank you.
This is probably the last day of Commissioners Court court that we could discuss my county salary because the affidavit is due with the state in just a few days. You all know that in the state of Texas, we have county attorneys, we have district attorneys, and we have criminal district attorneys. Criminal district attorneys do both jobs, the job of the county attorney and the district attorney. Of the 5 large counties, which I've given you the salary data for those, 3 of the counties, Dallas, Tarrant, and Bexar, have criminal district attorneys' offices. The second page that I gave you is as far as I'm able from public records to do a comparison of the elected officials in those counties. So all the criminal district attorneys, all these officials make the same state pay. It is the county salary that varies. Dallas County DA is paid from the county $102,117. Bexar County is paid $120,852, and Tarrant County is paid $65,548. I am requesting humbly and respectfully that you set my county salary commensurate with my job responsibilities, with my qualifications and experience, and with other similarly situated officials. So the average of the Dallas and Bexar County salaries is $111,000. For me to reach that average would be a county salary increase of $45,936, and I am requesting your consideration. And I appreciate so much what Dion said this morning, that we should advocate for ourselves, because I'll tell you, it's uncomfortable to stand before you all and ask for an increase in pay for the job that I do. I will tell you that as an elected official, we all were always paid the same, right? And so I haven't had to do this in a long time, but I'm requesting it now.
Y'all have any questions?
No, we put that on the list with this other item for next week, or?
If we do it next week, then it'll be in the paper. We got to act on this one today.
We have to act on
this.
We have to put out a notice in the paper, and it requires that it be at least 10 days prior to us setting the tax rate and approving the budget, which is September 10th. So we will need to take action. If you want to change what your current position is, you're going to need to take action today on this request.
What we voted previously to do was to put her in a system where she would continue to get 3% of what the county's supplement was, which is what we have done historically, until such time as the sheriff and the county judge's salary caught up to her, and then she would move along the same schedule as the sheriff, the county judge, and the DA. That, under current assumptions of a 3% increase, would mean that the sheriff and the county judge would catch up to her somewhere around 2025.
May I respond?
Sure.
And I appreciate that, and I appreciate that it would be nice for elected officials to be paid the same. I will tell you that not in the history of our county have we tied the DA's pay to the county judge and to the sheriff. And I actually don't think it happens in any other county either.
You know, I would tell you, I think that we are, you know, I can tell you what Dallas said, and I can tell you I don't agree with him either, in that he said when we ran, we knew what we were getting and we should never get a raise. I don't agree with that.
Who said that?
Clay Jenkins.
No.
Judge Jenkins. Of course, that's being appealed by every other elected official except for the 3 that voted for it in court. You know, I just feel like that this was something Dallas a long time ago when we had when Joe came around was when they raised their DA up to be comparable to what Tarrant County was. we had said for many years that Tim, who was DA for 40 years, was higher than any other. For the longest time, he was the highest paid DA in the state. And we had planned on, at the point in time that he retired, reducing that salary. Joe came along and said, oh, wait a minute, if you do that, I'm gonna not be able to collect my legislative retirement. And so if you cut that salary, I'm gonna take about a 40 to 45,000. Well, that did not end up being the case, but he forgot to come back and tell us that. And so when we made the changes, when we adjusted the DA's salary back down to where we thought it was appropriate. Now, the legislature basically has made the statement that in the future, past the base pay of $140,000, they're not giving anything. Because to the extent that we give the DA more than the supplement that they're giving to the district judges, then for every dollar we go over that, they reduce the additional supplement for that they're paying toward. If I hadn't got everybody confused by now, give me a couple more minutes and I'll get you there.
You've got me there.
The bottom line is the state will not, under the current system, the state will not give, will not reimburse us any more than $140 unless we were to decrease our salary, which we've all said we're going to do, to an $18,000 supplement.
And so,
plus, then she would get some. She'd get, I guess, another 14 because you've been here for 4.5 years now.
so and I appreciate the historical references. So we actually have records where my predecessor, Joe Shannon, made $260,000 a year. And yes, for some reason he was cut. It was, as I understood it, after the lawsuit that cost the county, I've got the form. It was after the lawsuit that cost the county around $500,000. I think Helen's saying that I'm wrong on that, but I've got one of the salary forms. And it could be incorrect. I mean, I'm dealing with public records, so, you know. I mean, it could be, right? So what did you have?
I don't know exactly, but I don't think it was ever at 260.
And I know that it was cut dramatically after the lawsuit and the expense to the county. I'm simply asking, you all have the salaries for everyone else in this position. The other large counties, you have my experience, you have my record of service to the county, and I am requesting salary commensurate with that.
I make a motion that we raise Sharon's, the criminal district attorney's county wage from $65,548.34 to $100,000.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion?
Yes. So is that 5,000 less what the difference was? What you that the DA had mentioned? 10,000.
What would that put her total compensation would be around?
She would be 2,000 under Dallas. 20,000 under Bear.
Will you repeat those numbers, please? Commissioner Fickus, will you repeat those numbers?
Yeah, I think she would be $117 under Dallas County, and she'd be $20,852 under Bear County.
So you're suggesting that her total compensation would be $240,000?
Roughly, yeah, 240.
Any other discussion? Please vote. Motion passes 3-2.
go find some more forfeiture money so we can pay for that?
So in your packet, you have a sheet that looks somewhat like this. Okay? This doesn't concern expenditures. This concerns the tax rate. So the proposed tax rate that staff had recommended was to maintain the current rate of .234 per $100 valuation. That would, when you look at the reserves, that would generate about $67 million in reserves, or about 14.5% reserves compared to other expenditures in the general and transportation budgets. If the court makes a determination to lower the tax rate, then whatever that amount is will be coming out of our reserves. So if you look at column number 2, if the court wants to decrease the tax rate by 0.5 cent, that would mean that $8.9 million would be coming out of reserves. That would leave us a reserve ratio of 12.6%, and it would decrease our tax rate to .229 per $100 valuation. If, in fact, the court would like to reduce the tax rate by 1/4 cent, that means that it would reduce the reserves by $4.5 million, which would create a ratio between reserves and expenditures, or budgeted expenditures, of 13.5%, and our new tax rate would be .2315. Now, we present this without a recommendation because we know that various court members have asked us to look at this.
What is the current percentage ratio?
The current percentage ratio at the .234, that ratio is 14.5% with this new. You're asking what the current ratio is? Yeah, our current ratio is about 10%.
10%.
In 2019.
In 2019. And you might recall also that the reason that we were going to increase the reserves was because, unlike this coming fiscal year that we're budgeting for, the next year is a 3.5%. And just some general comments, and these are my comments, but I've been doing this for a while. The only other revenues that you're going to have above and beyond the 3.5% that are going to be significant to any extent is going to be new construction. Now, we hit a high water mark this year, a new construction. I personally don't believe that you're going to see that type of stability at that deal. I think that number is going to come down because it was extraordinarily high this year. And so we're going to be entering into a situation, the economy's been pretty good, it's not going to last forever. And whenever the economy starts to slightly decrease or go down, it has a direct impact on new capital or new construction. So I can't tell you what that number is going to be. This is just simply a cautionary note that I want to make you all aware of. That's the reason we raised it from 10% to the 14%. So the other two recommendations are still above the 10%. But if you choose to go with a decreased tax rate, I would strongly encourage you not to go below the 3 scenarios that you see on this sheet.
And everything that we're looking at this year is, I mean, that's going to be pure operational. We were looking at, I think earlier, a 9% increase in expenditures. And I know that's my numbers trying to compare actual to actual. But what we've done here today is we've increased operational expenditures by somewhere in the neighborhood of $250,000. Because I'm still going to claim that.
Yes, sir.
And I mean, at the same time, we've got Today, we have about 400, let me see where that number is. Today, we've got 459 prisoners that are sitting in our jail that belong to the state. And if you just take that on a $75 a day, that's a $12.5 million expenditure that the state pays absolutely nothing for.
That's just one of many things.
That's one of many. We haven't even gotten into any of the other stuff that goes along with that. So, you know, I think while I definitely wanted to do the half cent, you know, I'm not ready to make a decision today, but I think next year we're going to come in here, and you said it, we're going to be looking for things to cut. And yet we sit here today and we act.
You're exactly right. And until we know what this gap's going to do to us, we need to be real careful for future of Tarrant County and the health of our government. Nobody up here wants to cut our tax rate more than I do. I just want to be sure that we are cautious in doing so, because next year is going to be a new day.
If we leave the rate, I'm asking this question, I'm not stating this as a fact. If we leave the rate at 0.234, I believe that is approximately a 6.9% increase over the effective rate. And I did that simply by taking the 2.34.
It's how much?
I think it's 6.92, but now Helen and Russell are going to both probably jump up and start screaming here in a minute. If I take the 2.34 and divide that by the effective rate, which I believe is 0.218852, then that is a 6.9% increase if we stay at that. If we drop it a half a cent, then it's 4.64%. But that includes debt service, and I know you're going to come back and tell me, no, it's just got to be M&O, and that's where we're going to get into the devils are in the detail. But
it is the total.
It is the total.
It's the sum of the two rates.
And we hadn't even talked about where we are on a capital standpoint, because I think as long as we're paying cash for our capital, that really is treated as though we're M&O.
Correct.
Which make things even worse from that perspective. So I mean, I hear us all talking about cutting next year. I don't think we really understand what we may, and it's what Mr. Maney has just said. I'm not sure we understand what we're talking about next year, because I don't think we're saying don't add people next year. I think we're saying take what you got and cut. Tell us what you're going to not do next year that you're doing this year, or in this coming budget year that we're just fixing to approve.
I agree that we need to be real cautious about next year, but I don't think it's anywhere near as gloomy a picture as we're painting this morning. Growth is always a lagging indicator. There are many projects that are in the pipeline that are going to go forward, and we won't feel the effects of the slowdown in the economy in terms of growth for probably a couple of years yet. But that does not mean we should not be cautious, because it is coming.
And I guess the one comment I have about that is and again, we've still got to see, I want to see the final numbers, but as I understand it right now, with the growth that we experienced this year, which I think is more growth than we've ever had before, we are setting a budget, if we cut the tax rate, that will spend $8 to $9 million if it at a half a cent, $8 to $9 million more than we're bringing in. And that's operational. That's not capital. That's just operational. And so that means that next year, unless we have another record-breaking year as far as growth, we're going to be in a hole. We're either going to be taking our reserves down more, or we are going to be going to people and saying, from this point forward, you're not only not adding people, but you're going to be cutting people. So that's just, again, we're not going to take any action, I don't think, today, but I think that's something that.
As the financial person, the only comment I would make is when we established the 10%, when the court established the 10%, it was in a very different time. And one of the things we considered at that point in time was because we were unlike cities, we were not dependent on sales tax and some other things that were even more impacted. We felt the 10% was adequate. I think part of this discussion is to focus again on what you think is adequate. And historically, most cities and other entities have had more than a 10% reserves because of these types of uncertainties. And so whatever that number you choose, I think you really need to not only look at the fact that the uncertainty is certainly greater, regardless of whether it's next year or, as Commissioner Brooks said, none of us know when it's going to occur. But what is an appropriate level of reserves for this court? And I've been here myself a long time, and I would certainly hate to see the court erode away its the strong financial position it has when we're in a position where maybe that isn't necessary. But again, that's y'all's call and what you feel comfortable with what your level of reserve should be. But I personally, as a financial person, do not think 14% is out of line. But neither is the 10.
Thank you, Renee.
So there's not a point now that the court wants to make a decision. Then I would ask that you think about this, because next week, which is the 3rd, we're going to ask you to make a decision, because we have to publish the budget and put it in a standard form, which includes the revenue side of it, by the 10th, which is 2 weeks from today. So we will bring this up again for your consideration next week. That's all we have at this time, Your Honor.
Cool. This time, we will recess our open meeting and proceed to close to discuss items exempted under Section 551.071, 072, 074, 076, and 087 of the Texas Government Code. Having returned from our closed session, there being no business to conduct at this time, we stand adjourned.